Okay, will do.
Awesome. So I want to talk about self-care for the saints and just jump right on in with opening practice. And so why I like to do an opening practice is just because I know that this is a Friday, so we've all had the whole week. And sometimes after we have dealt with all the things that came our way throughout the week, we still have some of that in our system. And it can be hard to really just like settle and be present in this moment because we're thinking about what happened earlier at work or with the family or with the partner or whatever. And so I like to do these opening practices just to get our minds ready and set to receive. And so for this opening practice, I'm going to invite you to first of all, just get in a comfortable position, whether that's seated or even if you need to lay down, no judgment, lay down, whatever you need to do to just get in a comfortable seated position. This won't be too long, but just allow your body to be fully supported by whatever you're sitting on and um, a- allow yourself to relax. And if you feel comfortable allowing your eyes to close, if that's not available to you, equally, you can just lower your gaze. This just means just kind of let the eyelids come down just a little bit. And this just helps with reducing outside distractions and things in your environment that may distract you from taking your attention inward. And the purpose of this opening practice is to really just check in with yourself and how you're doing in this moment. So, like I said, allowing your eyes to close and just taking a few deep breaths here. A lot of times we hold our breath when we are stressed out or when things are not going our way, but this is a moment where we can grant ourselves permission to just be right here, right now. And so just tuning in to see what is going on the inside of my skin. What's happening? Noticing any places in your body where you might be holding on to some tension or bracing yourself. So many times we have to do that going throughout life, holding on to tension maybe in our shoulders or clenching our jaw, clenching our fists. And I just want to invite you to give yourself permission in this moment to simply just be here. There's nothing that you need to do, nothing that you need to be in this moment, but just here right now. Nothing is being required of you. It's nice to just be sometimes. God created us as human beings, not human doings. And so it's good for us to spend time just being, letting go of all the expectations that are placed upon us or we might place upon ourselves. And so just checking in as you would like you're checking the weather on the outside, but checking the weather on the inside of you. Like, what is the weather patterns like for you right now? What's going on? What emotions are present for you right now? How does it feel to be in your body? Are you feeling content, feeling energized, feeling a bit tired? Just tuning in, not trying to change any of it, but just increasing our awareness of where we are and how we are in this moment. And then gently shifting your attention to the breath. The breath is a natural calming system that we have in our body that's available to us all the time, but sometimes we forget about that and we hold our breath or we shallow breathe. But the invitation right now is to engage in some deep belly breaths. Let the breath come all the way from your stomach and just tune into those physical sensations of your body as it breathes. Not trying to modify the pace of your breath in any way, but just simply allowing the body to breathe itself and you just being a gentle witness of this miracle that happens really without any effort from us. Our bodies just know how to breathe. And so noticing the inhalation as you're entering the breath is entering your body, noticing how that impacts the body, and then the exhalation, noticing what happens when you release the breath. And so just taking a few cycles on your own time to just sense into your body in this moment and just to breathe. Again, noticing if you're holding on, clenching, bracing yourself, and seeing if it's possible to just release into this moment, allowing your body to be fully supported by the chair or the floor, the bed, wherever you're sitting, allowing the shoulders to relax, letting the thighs relax, letting the hands be soft, letting the belly be soft. And all of this is just in the service of fully arriving in this moment, being here right now in mind, body, and spirit. And now, as we prepare to release this brief practice, just remembering that you can always come back to the breath to ground yourself at any moment if you need to. And bringing the same level of awareness, self awareness into the next hour that we're going to be spending together. And when you are ready, you can allow the eyes to flutter open and return movement to your body. All right. So hopefully that brought us all here in the moment. And like I said, I'm so honored and excited to be here with you to share some about self care. And so I'm just going to jump right in with what is self-care. So I know that this is a buzzword, and if you are anywhere on social media, you have probably heard of self-care, and a lot of people made jokes about self-care being, treat yourself or going to take a bubble bath or getting a pedicure or manicure. And so really when I think about self-care, what I think about is this quote from Audre Lorde. She says, caring for myself is not self indulgence, it is self preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. So, this idea that like taking care of ourselves is the way that we preserve ourselves, the way that we keep ourselves sane in this coronavirus and racism pandemic that we're living in. This is how we keep ourselves sane, is by taking care of ourselves. And so what does it look like to take care of yourself? Well, I think there's three elements when we think about taking care of ourselves. And what we're doing when we're engaging in self-care, we're doing things that help us to feel healthy in our bodies, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. So we're doing things to promote our health. We're also doing things that promote our happiness, things that just bring us joy. We're not necessarily concerned about whether someone else likes it or not. We're doing things that we enjoy that bring us pleasure. And then also, we're doing things that help us to be effective in our lives. And what does it mean to be effective? To be effective in your life means to do what works for you, right? And so, again, not looking to the left and to the right, comparing yourself, but doing what works for you, what helps you get through the moment, again, in a way that is healthy, and in a way that protects your overall well being. And so when we practice self-care, then it really does help us to be able to manage the stress of our lives. We know that stress is inherent, it's a part of the human condition. We will all experience stressors. Some stressors are positive stressors, like getting engaged or getting married or buying a new home. Like those are positive stressors, but they also are stressed because they require new ways of coping, and they create new things that we have to tackle and we have to deal with. And so we want to be able to manage that stress effectively, and self care allows us to do that. It also helps us to prevent illness, and it helps us to just be well in our lives and be fulfilled and be happy. And that's what we're striving for when we engage in self care, when we think about self care. So it's not just the surface level, definitely bubble baths, taking trips, doing pedicures. I love all of those things. So I'm not saying that those things are wrong, but also self care has to be deeper than just the surface level, right? So we have to engage in self-care that nourishes us more fully on a body level, on a spiritual level, on an emotional level, which is what I'm going to talk about today. And so when we think about this, I want to just bring up this wheel of wellness, because there are different domains in our lives that we can be attentive to when we're thinking about engaging in self-care. So we have environmental. So, like, how are we engaging with our environment? How is our environment set up? And so, immediately, this is like our living situation. How is that set up? How is that conducive to our health, our happiness, and our effectiveness? In the same way, emotions, like, how do we respond when we have certain emotions? That's emotional self care. Do you allow yourself to feel your feelings, or do you try to stuff them and make them go away? Then there's intellectual self-care, this idea we know that we need exercise for our physical bodies in order for them to kind of like work at the top of their game. But the same is true for our minds, right? Our mind is a muscle, and we want to grow it. We want to exercise it so that our memory can stay sharp, so that we can actually concentrate when we want to, so that we can focus on the things that we want to. And so thinking about how are we engaging our brains and keeping our minds sharp? Are we challenging ourselves sufficiently to grow those new neurons in our brains and help us to really function at the top of our game? And then we can engage in physical self-care, which I mentioned. It's, eating foods that fuel our body. It's also giving ourselves some type of movement that we find nourishing, and that kind of gets the heart rate pumping and gets our muscles and our joints loose, and keeps them flexible. But then a part of physical self-care that's often neglected is rest and sleep. And so, are we giving ourselves that amount of sleep that we need? It's recommended, even for adults, that we get 8 hours of sleep every night. So, are we doing that for ourselves? That's a way that we engage in self care and take care of ourselves. And then social self-care. Who do you have in your circle of friends, in your community that supports you? Like, who is your support system comprised of? And what do you need in that area? What types of support are you in need of in these coronavirus streets? And are you giving yourself that? Are you asking for the things that you need from your support system? That's social self-care. Then spiritual self-care is this idea that we exist beyond what we see when we look in the mirror. Like, we are more than this physical body that we have. We have a spirit, a essence, a soul, that transcends everything that's in the here and now and what we see when we look in the mirror. And so, how are we pouring into our spirits? How are we nurturing our spirits? And I think a huge piece of that is engaging with our church family, right? Reading the Bible, engaging with God through prayer, through worship. That's how we feed our spirit. And so, these are 6 different dimensions or areas in our life where we can infuse self-care and we can take better care of ourselves. And so, why self-care? And so I like to again take this right back to the examples that we saw in the Bible, right? So we saw that God, after he finished doing all the work he did in Genesis of creating the world, he rested. We see that. So when he, and it mentions it twice in this little small passage, that he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. And so if God rested, why do we think that we don't need to rest, right? So I think that in the world that we live in now, there's a lot of glorification of like grind culture and hustling, and this idea that I'll sleep when I die, and we just push ourselves to the limit till we don't have anything else left to give. And what I'm here to challenge you with around that is that's not the way God intended us to live. He didn't intend for us to just like spend all of our days completely exhausted and completely spent and never taking time to replenish ourselves. And again, if the idea is that we are supposed to be modeling ourselves after Christ and after what we see in the Bible, we see several examples of rest. And so we have to be willing to follow that mandate. Really, it's a command that we take care of ourselves. And so we see this in First Corinthians chapter 6, 19 through 20. Our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. So God is indwelling in us, right? Like he has given the Holy Spirit to us and that lives in us. And so the question that I have for you then is what are you doing with the temple? Are you honoring it? Are you treating it as precious? Are you treating it as if the dwelling of the Holy Spirit is inside of you? And what kind of environment? You think about like when you maybe host a party at your house or host Thanksgiving or host Christmas, you clean up the house, you make it very plush, very nice. You want it to smell good, you want it to look good. And so when we think about the Holy Spirit indwelling in us, what kind of environment, what kind of atmosphere and context have we created on the inside of ourselves for the Holy Spirit? Is it a comfortable environment? Is it an environment where there's room for the Holy Spirit to work inside of us? Are we just completely depleted, tapped out, exhausted, and just not able to really provide a nice, comfortable space? And the other piece with this second verse that's here on the screen is this idea that we are called to honor God with our bodies. And so engaging in self-care is a way that we actually honor God. And so I think this is really a helpful way of thinking about it, because when I go around talking to people about self-care, the number one barrier that I hear across the board from men and women is this idea that it's selfish. And so we have to rework that. We have to like let go of that's a toxic mindset that self-care is selfish, because that can be further from the truth. Because what I like to say is, when you think about it, if you are not taking care of yourself, what version of you are you giving to your family, to the people that you lead? If you're a preacher or a leader in any capacity, like what version of you are you giving to people? And is that the version that you desire to be giving? Do you want to be like short with your children and irritable with your partner? Because that's what happens when we don't take care of ourselves. We get irritated, we get impulsive, we don't think thoroughly through the things that we say or our actions. And so it's really about like, are those things honoring God? And the answer, I think, would be no. And so when we engage in self-care, we put ourselves in a better position to be honoring to God through our actions and through our service and the way that we live our lives. And so that's my plea to you, to think about self-care differently, not to think about it as selfish, but to think about this is how I am honoring this temple that God has entrusted me with. He's entrusted us with our bodies in this life, and what am I doing with it? Am I making the best use of it? And so we think about self-care is really essential. Like I think these days it's non-negotiable. Like maybe before March, before COVID-19 happened, we could kind of play around with this, but I think we really don't have room to play around with self-care given all of the effects that we see of COVID-19. So we are all noticing that there's a lot of fear out in this environment, because people are afraid of contracting this virus. Because if you haven't heard, there are racial disparities disparities with regard to how people are dying from coronavirus. The people who are Black and brown are dying at higher rates from coronavirus. So there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty about when is this going to be over. I've heard a lot of people talking about when can we go back to normal, and are we ever going to be able to go back to normal? That's a question. And so we, like, as humans, we like to have the illusion of control. We like to feel like we're in control, and when we can kind of predict things, we feel like, okay, I'm in control. But these days, we really can't predict what's going to happen from one day to the next. And so that's why we have to pour into ourselves and take care of ourselves. There's also a lot of loss. I'm aware that in the congregation there, that folks have lost social connections because we're not meeting together in church buildings anymore. And that's a loss. That's a significant loss. The not being able to commune with your church family and give those hugs that we like to give and give those handshakes and see the smiles and see the energy from people as we're maybe up there singing or as we're up there preaching. That's hard. That's a shift that we've had to make. And then there's chronic stress, right? There's the stress of people losing their jobs. There's the financial strain that comes with losing jobs and not having that financial security. And then there's grief. So I'm aware, and a lot of the members there have experienced loss of people, and I am not immune to that. At the beginning of all of this, I lost a very dear cousin of mine to coronavirus back in Georgia, where I'm from, and was not able to go back to the funeral. And so we have this grief without closure. There's not that closure of, I went to the funeral, I could like get the support of my family and friends. We are being called upon to like grieve in isolation and by ourselves, and that's really hard. And then also stuck in the house. A lot of people have become teachers, right? That they didn't sign up for that role, but they've become teachers for children who have not been able to go to school. And then also just being in the house with yourself, right? But a lot of times it's a survival strategy to keep ourselves busy and to keep going, because then we don't have to really deal with some of the uncomfortable things that might show up for us if we really slow down and get quiet and get still. And so we like to keep moving because that helps us stay distracted. But there's not a lot of distraction these days with us being in the house so much, with ourselves and with our own minds and our own thoughts. And so that's why we need self-care. And then with our partners and our family members, we love them, but sometimes you want some time away. And when you can't have that time away, it gets stressful. It gets stressful. And so these are just a minor set of the reasons why we need to be engaging in self-care and why we need to see self-care as essential. And then we can't neglect that we have a racism pandemic going on in our country. This is not anything new, by the way. I think George Floyd just brought it. It was kind of like ripping the Band-Aid off again, like the wound was already there and it was already not healed, but we ripped the Band-Aid off and it brought it to the light again, with all that we've seen in the past few months. And we know from our psychological research that we do not get through racism and deal with the oppression and the marginalization that we face as Black and brown people of color without any scars, right? And a lot of those wounds that we experience are invisible. We can't see them. So a lot of people deal with symptoms of post-traumatic stress, feeling like they can't concentrate, feeling on guard for their safety, having nightmares sometimes, not feeling safe in your own skin. There's depression, feeling sadness, there's anxiety. Some people feel more angry or more irritable, more on edge. And also not being able to focus. And not only those kind of mental health consequences, but then there's also physical health consequences. And again, this is substantiated by the research. We see that when we experience racism and oppression, it impacts the way our body physically functions. So I have some of those things on the slide there. And also we know that systemic racism that impacts a lot of us results in us having fewer financial and educational resources and poor quality of life. So, again, if you want reasons why we need to engage in self care, these are just a few. So, we have like double pandemics going on right now with coronavirus and with racism. So, we have to take care of ourselves in the midst of all of this if we're going to be able to survive it and going to be able to experience the joy and the freedom that God really did design for us to be able to experience in this lifetime. And so I love this quote here because it really um goes against culture in a way that I really appreciate. Being overworked isn't a virtue or a work ethic to be admired. And so, again, we're going against grind culture. We're going against hustling every day. And we're going against like team no sleep. We're not doing that because we know that that doesn't sustain us. And we know that in the end, that just harms us. And it maybe even speeds up our time, our death, and makes us just not happy overall. And that's not what we were designed to experience. So we're trying to get away from this like grind culture, this overworking and just never taking time to take care of yourself. And it's not a virtue, even though the world will tell you, wow, you know, you're functioning off of 3 or 2 hours of sleep. That's great. I wish I could do that. But that's not something to be praised or something to be admired because again, it's harming us, even though we might not see the ramifications right away. And in the long run, it's harming us. And so some of the barriers to self-care I want to talk about because I know that this is real, that people have legitimate challenges and reasons why they don't engage in self-care. And so I hope you understand that everything that I say today is never with judgment. It's not judging you. It's not wanting you to feel bad about yourself. Rather, my goal is to create awareness for you to know really what self-care really is and how you can actually incorporate it into your life so that you can examine yourself, right? And say, do I need to make changes? And if I do, where do I want to make those changes? And how can I move forward? So, this is definitely a judgment free zone. I'm not here to judge you or make you feel bad about yourself, but it's just about understanding, having that increased awareness and then understanding how do I want to move from here with this new knowledge. And so again, so the overwork, I just had the quote about overwork. A lot of us have multiple responsibilities. We don't have the luxury of just having one hat to wear. Like I mentioned earlier, some of us have been pulled into teaching our kids because they can't go to school. Some of us also, work a full time job, but then also have a side hustle, but then also have a partner at home and also have a home to maintain. So that's a lot going on. It's not just one thing that we're doing in our day to day life. We have multiple hats that we wear and multiple roles that we occupy from day to day. And I think another real thing is guilt, right? Guilt and shame. A lot of people feel like I have so many people depending on me. It's not fair. It's not right for me to take some time for myself and take care of myself. And that's a real legitimate barrier that people face or shame feeling like I'm wrong, like I don't deserve this, right? This self-sacrificing idea that we are just designed, and I think this is particularly ingrained in women, but also in men, that you are just give to everybody else until you don't have anything else left to give, and then you just try to like take care of yourself from whatever residue you have left over after you've given to everybody else, and that gets in the way. Sometimes a lack of awareness, we don't know what we need and we don't know what to do to take care of ourselves. We legit have not been taught how to take care of ourselves. And so that's why we're not doing it because we don't know how. Lack of time and resources again. A lot of people say I don't have time for this. I have so much going on, and I don't have the money to be taking care of myself. And I will interject a side note here is that you don't need money to take care of yourself. And also, there are a lot of things that you can do, which I'll be talking about today, that don't cost money. They cost you time and they require your commitment. But self-care does not require money. It's not about a large vacation going on to try to reinvent yourself or rejuvenate yourself. It's the small, consistent acts that you engage in that have the most benefit overall to your health. Strong black woman slash man stereotype. So this is really big in the female community. Black woman community is this mandate that is usually placed on us to be strong, right? To never show any signs of emotion, never show any signs of weakness, to take care of everybody else, to be the backbone, the cornerstone of our communities, to be the backbone of our households. And that is a lot of pressure and a lot of weight to be walking around with on your shoulder, that everything is dependent upon you. And the same thing for men too. And so it's hard to engage in self care when you feel like I have to be strong, I can never break. But we know that that's not sustainable. And then feelings of unworthiness, feeling like I don't deserve this because maybe of something that happened in your past or something that you experienced before, feeling like I am not worthy of my own time and my own care and my own attention. And then sometimes there's pride that gets in the way. Again, no judgment zone, but sometimes we have been built up in our circle, in our social groups or in our circles or maybe in our church families, where we are that one person, that strong person, right, that everybody goes to, that everybody gets advice from. And so it kind of feels like, well, I can't, show them that I don't have it all together, because they, I like the fact that they think I have it all together even though I don't. And so sometimes we allow pride to stop us from engaging in self-care because we don't want to show that we have any weakness. But we know that the only time that we are really strong is when we are weak, and when we allow God and the indwelling of the Holy Spirit to really work through us. That's when we're at our best, and that's when we're at our strongest, because anything that God can do through us is much better than anything that we try to do on our own willpower. And so it's really about us abandoning that idea that I have to be strong in all circumstances for all people. And I can't let them see me break. I can't show any sign of weakness. That doesn't help us. That only hurts us. And then procrastination, sometimes we put it off. It's like, I don't have time for that today. I'll do it next week. And, next week turns into next month. And then by the time we've never done it, I work with clients all the time who are like, I want to start eating better. I want to start sleeping better. I want to get myself on a routine. And somehow we just end up putting it off because, again, these other things that are up there, we have other things that are pulling for our attention. And so really what self-care requires is intentionality. It requires prioritization as well. You have to prioritize it above other things, because there'll always be something else that you could be doing with your time. There's always something else that needs your attention. But it's really about what's most important in this moment, and making sure that you are near the top of your priority list and not on the back burner. So all of this to say that these barriers are very legitimate, and there's something that I would encourage you to be aware of. Like, scan through this list and maybe take a note to yourself, like, which of these barriers are most relevant to me? Which of these resonate with me? And how can I start to think about addressing these barriers in my own life? Because you want to get out of the habit of not taking care of yourself. And if one of these is kind of creating that habit for you, you want to see how you can break that up. And so now I want to really just get into the meat and potatoes of talking about 10 strategies, self-care strategies that you can implement in these coronavirus streets to help you really sustain yourself. And remembering that self-care is never selfish. Again, it's a way that we can honor and glorify God, and also a way that we sustain ourselves and make sure that we're around for when coronavirus is over. We don't want to stress ourselves out to the fact that we start having health complications and issues related to that. So how do we do that? First and foremost is it's an act of self-care to spend time with God, right? So we talked about, and for all of these, I just have a verse on the screen that really kind of grounds this in scripture. So you know that I'm like, yes, I'm speaking from like my mental health expertise and psychological background, but also I'm not saying anything that is contrary to the will of God and to the Bible. And so I have that just so you can check me for that. But spending time with God, that's so important. You think about it. What is the first thing that you do when you get up in the morning? If you be real with Me. What is the first thing that you do when you get up in the morning? I know for me, for a while, it was checking my phone. That was the first thing that I did. I slept with the phone by the bed, and the first thing I pick up in the morning is my phone. And because I know I got emails, because people are all in different time zones, I check my email first thing in the morning. And what happens when I do that, when I used to do that, is it sets an emotional tone. It sets the atmosphere for the day of stress, really, for me. That's what happened for me. It was stress and anxiety because I was like, oh, it was adding things to my to-do list, things that I needed to do. And it was really allowing the world and other people to set my priorities for the day. And so what I'm encouraging us to do is start the morning, the day off, spending time with God. What does that look like? Maybe it's in a devotional. Maybe it's spending time in prayer with God, actually having a conversation with Him, and not just like, reciting a prayer based on, like something we heard someone else say, but actually really being real, genuine, open, and authentic and engaging with God in a conversation. He likes us to be real with Him, right? So, and He wants to know what's on our hearts and what's on our minds. And so, really, having that communication with Him, engaging in worship, like worship, listening to worship music, singing hymns, spiritual songs, that really does change the atmosphere. So you think about spiritual self-care, really rejuvenating your spirit and giving you something to be hopeful about, giving you a reason to look forward to tomorrow. That's what this can do for you. And reading the Bible too, filling your mind with truth. We see the news today. If they're not talking about coronavirus, they're talking about the election, and they're talking about all of these things that are meant to create fear in us and create this sense of uncertainty and fear of the future. And so what we need to do is ground ourselves in something that will not change, which is the word of God, the truth of how He has required for us to live and how He desires for us to live. And when we feed our minds and our souls that truth, that helps us to have a sure foundation to stand on. And so we don't have to worry about who's going to get elected or what's going to happen tomorrow, because we know that God's got us. But we can't know that if we don't steep ourselves in His word, and we don't stay in the word, and we don't meditate on it and recite it to ourselves over and over again. And this is not like a one-time thing that we do one time and then we hope that it sticks with us. This is a muscle that we have to build through continual practice. And so that's why I'm encouraging you every day, spending time with God, finding some time, even if you can't do it first thing in the morning, sometime throughout your day to spend with God. And it's really not about the length of time that you're spending, it's just the consistency, getting yourself in the habit of allowing Him to set your mindset for the day, allowing Him to set your agenda, allowing Him to help you prioritize all the things on your to-do list. And then you'll find that you can experience that peace that He talks about, that surpasses all understanding, when you ground yourself in Him and allow Him to set the tone for the day. Number 2, connects, right? We are social distancing. We're by ourselves. Some of us living by ourselves, others of us just not getting the social connection that we're used to getting by going into the office, or by even, chit-chatting with people at the post office or at the grocery store. It's just different these days because everybody has on a mask, and we're staying in our house more. And so really what we want to do is find creative ways of connecting. We were not created to do life by ourselves and to be in isolation. That's not how we were created. And so we are social beings. And so we need to make sure that we are creating opportunities for ourselves to connect. And technology can be very useful in this realm. So we can send emails to people. We can even send snail mail. The other day I got a handwritten letter from someone, and I just thought it was the most amazing thing. It really was like the highlight of my day that day, because I had not gotten a handwritten note in I don't know how long. And so you think about how that really can brighten someone's day and really allow us to feel connected. I felt connected with that person who sent me that. We have Zoom now. We have all of these different platforms that allow us to see each other. Although we can't like reach out and touch each other, there's something about being able to see people's facial expressions that doesn't happen necessarily when you're on the phone with them. And so I encourage you to think about, like, what do I need? What about Zoom? What about FaceTiming someone? And then like going to a whole nother level of support is what about therapy, right? So when we notice that we are having emotional struggles where we find ourselves like constantly dealing with sadness and we can't find our way out of it, and maybe it's been going on for a long time, it's not just like a week, but now it's been going on for months. Maybe that's a sign that it's time for you to talk to someone to really help you through that. Again, we were not made to do life alone, and we are not supposed to have all the answers. That's another lie that we tell ourselves, that I think the world kind of ingrains in us, is that you pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and you should be able to work through any challenge that you face. And I think something that we tell ourselves in the church, or that we hear in the church, is that if you're struggling emotionally, then that means that your faith just isn't strong enough, or that means that you don't trust God. And I'm here to say that that's not always the case. God can work through therapists, right? He can work through therapists. He uses people to bless us and to be able to use their knowledge to help us navigate the challenges that we face in our lives. So definitely utilize that if you can. There's a lot of insurance companies, if you have insurance, that will cover therapy. And so you're just paying a copay, sometimes not even paying a copay, particularly now during these times. Also, if you don't have insurance, there's a lot of therapists who offer sliding scales, which means that they charge you based on what you make in your income, and what you all negotiate feels comfortable for you. So don't rule it out if you don't have insurance and say that you can't afford it. Do the legwork to try to see if you can do that. And something that was really helpful for me and my family is we started a family prayer call where we were like, what is going on here? We had the death in the family. We can't connect with each other. We started a call where we could at least hear each other's voices, and we could pray over each other and really support each other verbally. And that did so much for my soul and for my spirit. And another thing I would say with connecting too is trying to get away from just asking people how are they doing, because it can be just very automatic for people to just respond and say fine, and they don't even really check in with themselves to see how they're really doing, and they don't tell you how they're really doing. But really trying to get some more specific questions about, like, how have you been sleeping lately? What did you have for dinner last night? What's the last book you read? What's the last movie you saw? What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite color? Like, really trying to get to know each other. And the reason why I say asking those deeper questions is because that's how you create social connection, because sometimes we are not craving just the small talk. We're craving like to really feel seen and to feel heard, and we can't feel seen and feel heard if we're constantly hiding ourselves, or we don't allow people to see us by holding in information and not being honest and truthful. So really asking more specific questions. And then I have on this slide, which I'm happy to send around if this is helpful to folks, information about free crisis lines, because sometimes it gets really tough. And if you find yourself in a place where you are really struggling emotionally, there are people who are trained, who are able to kind of speak with you and help to give you like in the moment coaching and support services so that you can keep yourself safe. So definitely avail yourself to that. Again, they're 24 hours, and they're free too, these two hotlines that I have here. Express your emotions. If you take nothing else away from my talk today with regard to self-care, I hope you take away that self-care is not selfish, but then also the importance of expressing your emotions. And so why this is so important is because it helps us to know what we need. When we know how we're feeling, when we're able to label our emotions and really be honest about our emotions, and we allow ourselves to feel our emotions, then we know how we can address them, because there's a lot of pain that and suffering that we endure by trying to like stuff our emotions, or trying to outwork our emotions, or just trying to act like they don't exist. So it's really important for us to express how we're feeling and what we're feeling, and allow those feelings to be there and work through us. We have emotions for a reason. They're just not there to be a nuisance, even though sometimes they feel uncomfortable and they feel like a nuisance. They're valuable data. They give us information about what needs we might have, just like an indicator light on your car comes on to tell you, oh, it's time to change the oil, or it's time to check the engine. That's what emotions emotions come there to do? To alert us of something that needs attention. And so we have to be paying attention. We have to pay attention and tune in to our emotions. And so I would encourage you to start coming up with labels for your emotions. So this is an emotion wheel. Um, from online, and it really helps you to kind of get specific about what you're feeling, because when you can articulate what you're feeling to, and I think particularly in relationships, that helps people know where you're at, and it helps you to be able to advocate for yourself and ask for what you need when you can be honest and be real about what you're feeling. And I love this quote, which says, "Feeling is a profound act of rebellion when you've been conditioned to stuff everything in." And right, a lot of us have been conditioned through maybe our family of origin or through society, and feeling just not seen, not heard, feeling like we can't take up space, feeling like we're undervalued in this country as Black and Brown people. Sometimes we feel like there's no room for our emotions. And so we get in this habit, this unconscious habit of just stuffing our emotions and not acknowledging them. But that is not helpful to us, because at some point they come out, right? And we know that, like, if you have a Coke bottle and you just shake it up really hard and then you open it, it's going to fizz out everywhere. And the same thing happens with our emotions. We can stuff and stuff and stuff, but at some point we're going to get full and it needs to release. And so that ends up us blowing up on somebody, or us doing an angry outburst, and we don't want that. And so that's why it's important for us to feel our emotions, to label how we're feeling, and be willing to sit with them. Be honest. I kind of touched on this earlier. So this goes back to the idea, when people ask you how you're doing, be honest. Like, don't just say I'm fine and keep it moving. Like, really take a moment, just one breath, to check in with yourself and say, like, how am I really feeling? Because that, again, that gives you information about what you might need in order to take care of yourself. And you don't have to like give everybody all your business and tell them everything that's going on for you. It can just be as simple as, like, I've had better days. Like, that's honest, right? That's honest, but it's not telling all your business. So you can be thoughtful about who you choose to divulge the information to, because one of the thought leaders that I really enjoy is Brene Brown, and she says not everyone has earned the right to hear your story, right? And so not everyone has earned the right to hear your story. And so you don't have to tell everybody your business, but find some people who you can really fully be yourself around, who you don't have to wear a mask around, who appreciate all parts of you and allow you to be honest about how you're feeling and what's going on for you. That is an act of self-care. Having a generous spirit. So this really is about us being willing to give each other the benefit of the doubt. And I say this for people who are struggling, being in the house, locked in the house, if you will, stuck in the house with people who are irritating you and getting on your last nerve. How can we create more generosity in our relationships, and having a generous explanation for behaviors that we don't enjoy or we don't like? So an example of this is, if you've asked someone to do something over and over again, like put their dirty clothes in the hamper, but they keep leaving it on the floor, or wash the dishes after they use them in the kitchen, but they keep doing it. Can you give them some grace, really, is what I'm saying. Can you give them some grace? Can you have a generous spirit and a generous interpretation of their behavior, that it's not that they don't want to do what you told them to do, or that they're trying to get under your skin, or they're trying to irritate you, but rather maybe they're dealing with their own stress and they're coping with some things that they don't quite know how to articulate. And so again, when you have a generous narrative for people when they're doing things that may be irritating to you, that can help you to be less, take it less personally. And that's really what I'm calling for here, is how can you be a little bit more generous and a little less judgy with people, again, because it's easy to get into the trap of just being irritable with people when you're stuck in the house with them, and you start seeing personality traits that you didn't know that were there, and it gets really hard. But if we have a generous interpretation of people's behavior, and know that maybe it's just in this circumstance that they're engaging in this way, and we can again be honest about how we feel about the impact of their behavior on us, maybe that creates an opportunity for us to have a conversation and come up with a game plan to move forward in a way that's healthier for our relationship. 6, give thanks. So this is really about gratitude, right? These times, again, the things that I listed that we're going through and we're experiencing because of COVID-19 creates a lot of uncertainty, and it helps us realize just how not in control we are. But there are things that we can be grateful for. And so this is really about giving thanks. And so getting in the habit of practicing gratitude. What do you have to be grateful for? And there's always something that you can be grateful for. And so it's really about making sure that not only that we're taking our concerns to God when we're engaging with him, but then also thanking him for all the things that he has done and all the things that he is going to do in the future, because coronavirus is not in control. God is in control of our future, right? And so we can still praise him and worship him and be thankful for that, be thankful for all the things that we do have. And I know as someone who, is always wanting to improve on myself, one trap that we can fall into is really focusing on all the things that we don't have or the things that we haven't achieved yet. But we have to not let that get in the way of us being grateful for all the things that God has done for us. So challenge yourself on a daily basis. At the end of the day, I do this. There's an app that I use actually that asks you about your gratitude for the day. And it's just one thing that I put that I'm grateful for. And it really does change the atmosphere and help me to realize that God is still in the blessing business, and it helps me to be hopeful. Release your concerns. So this is about all of the things that we're worried about. There's a lot to be worried about. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fears. There's a lot of anxiety. But really, what God has called us to do is cast that on Him. He doesn't want us to live in this worried, frantic, anxious state all the time, trying to problem solve everything and do everything on our own strength. He has called us in these verses I have on the screen to cast our cares onto Him, and then He will give us the peace that we so desire, that we need. And so the question for you here is, what have you been trying to handle on your own? And what of your worries, your anxieties, your concerns can you generously relinquish over to God and really say, okay, I've come to the end of my strength. I realize I can't do this. I realize that I don't have all the answers. I realize that your plan is better than my plan. And I'm really going to give this over to you. And when we give it over, we don't still hold on to it, right? We're not just like, playing with God, like, oh, let me give it to you. No, let me take it back. We really give it over and make sure that we leave it in his hands, and we trust that he has our best interest at heart, and that regardless of whatever happens, that it's all working for our good. It's all working for our good. So what can you hand over to him and release to him and relinquish to him in the service of your own mental health and your spiritual health? Then speaking life. Speak life over yourself. This is about, again, what are the thoughts that are coming to you? What thoughts come to you on a regular basis? What is your internal dialogue like? I know a lot of us have a very fierce inner critic that can be really un not nice. And so what is your internal dialogue like? And making sure that the things that you're speaking over your future, the things that you're speaking over your life are biblical, are things that God has promised to us. And so making sure that you are consuming things that are going to give you hope, that are going to point you in the direction of having a Christ-like attitude and demeanor in the face of the stress and the worry that you have. So making sure that you're speaking life. And this requires, again, for us to be in the word. Remember, number one was spending time with God and his word. And when we meditate on his word and when we challenge ourselves to memorize scripture, right? The Bible says to hide the word in your heart so that you have it available to you in those moments when you're stressed out and you're worried. You can recite those things over your life. So this is really what this is about, speaking life into your situation. And then similarly, guiding your thoughts. So we know that we cannot control our thoughts, no matter how much we might want to. We can't. make ourselves think something differently than we already think. Like that's just not possible. Our brains were designed to give us evaluations, judgments, to try to predict things. And so those are all the thoughts that we have. But we can take our thoughts captive, right? We can catch those thoughts as soon as they come to us. As if a worry thought comes to us or anxious thoughts come to us, we can catch that really quickly and replace it with the word. But that's only if we've done the previous step of speaking word over our life, spending time with God, being in the Bible, and knowing the word so that we can speak it and then we can think it and we can replace those thoughts with positive things. And I love this verse from Philippians. It's whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent and praiseworthy, think such things. So that's a check for yourself right there when you're thinking certain thoughts. Does it meet the criteria in this verse? And if it doesn't, how can I replace that thought with something that does meet the criteria in this verse so that I can feel better about my future? And then number 10, listening to your body. So this is goes back to that opening practice that we did earlier about really taking time to slow down, turn our attention inward and get still, because we can't know what we need for self-care unless we are familiar with ourselves and we spend time with ourselves and we quiet the outside noise and really know, what do I need in this moment? Sometimes I like to just close my eyes and ask myself, what is the most loving thing that I can give myself in this moment, particularly when I'm struggling or when I'm having a tough day? What is the most loving thing that I can do for myself in this moment? And it's really about kind of bringing this sense of peace to myself and helping me to slow down. And so there are several ways that you can listen to your body and get to know yourself, right? Get to know what you need. It can be meditation. You can also journal. That's a huge piece. And if anyone wants, I can send you some journaling prompts that I've created that can help you to kind of turn inward and resting. And rest, right, is different from sleep because it's you're alert when you're resting, but your mind is calm and quiet. So you're not asleep, but you're just kind of turning off the internal engines in your mind and really allowing yourself to just be. And this is again really important to learning yourself so you can know, what self-care do I need? Because the thing about self-care is it's not one size fits all. It's really about getting to know you and yourself and your unique needs. And your needs change from season to season in life too. And so that's why this needs to be a consistent practice of checking in with yourself and seeing, what do I need to take care of myself? And then I have a bonus here, choosing joy, right? So choose joy. Joy is a choice. And we know that God wants us to be joyful. That's one of the fruits of the Spirit is joy. And so we can cultivate joy in our life by choosing to do things that lift our spirit, that make us happy, that remind us that there's hope for tomorrow. And so, how challenging yourself, how can I intentionally create moments of joy in my life? What are the things that I enjoy to do? What are the things that make me laugh? What are the things that make me smile? What things make me hopeful for tomorrow? And how can I intentionally create those moments for myself? Not wait for it to happen, but how can I cultivate that for myself? So, whether that's intentionally going on YouTube and watching funny dog videos or cat videos, or like watching your favorite comedian, or cracking jokes with someone, like how can I create joy doing things that bring me joy, cooking my favorite meal and really savoring it? What are those things that you can do? So this is a bonus because I really want to articulate that joy is a choice that we can choose and we can cultivate over and over again. All right. So I want you to pick one because I want you to, like, listen to what I said today and be inspired and feel good and all that good stuff. But I really feel like my work is to help inspire behavioral change with you. Right. So I want to challenge you just to pick one of these things that I've talked about tonight, one of these 11 or 11, because I gave a bonus, ways that you can practice self care and start to cultivate that in your life. I want you to just pick one, just write down a number. If you have your phone right now, just put the number in your phone or put down what you think you can do just over the next week. I want you to commit to just over the next week. What can you do to practice self care in your own life and really choosing again, not based on what someone else might need, but based on what you might need? What is the most loving thing that you can do for yourself over this next week in the vein of self care? And so then when you pick that, I want you to really start small. So I just have some tips here. Um, to really when you take action, start small. So set one small goal for yourself with regard to practicing that one act of self-care over the next week. So we've already talked about which one you'll focus on. And then really try to stretch your comfort zone, right? So when you start something new, just like when you start a new exercise regimen, it's never comfortable. Like your muscles are sore because you're using muscles that you didn't know you had before. And this is the same way with self care. It's going to require some intentionality. It might feel a little bit different at first because it's new and that's normal. So don't abandon it just because it feels new. Stick with it and try to stretch outside of your comfort zone and do something that is helpful for you, even though it might not be comfortable. And then I encourage you after this call to really create a specific plan for how you're going to implement this. So when you pick one of these, really implement like what is the who, like who do I need to do this with? Is it just with myself? What time of the day am I going to do this? What is it going to really look like? Like get real elementary with it. What is it going to look like for me to do this on a daily basis? Like if I were speaking life over myself, what would that look like? What is the specific verse that I'm going to commit to speaking over my life in the next week? So getting very specific with yourself. And then something that can help when you're trying to do this too is setting reminders because again, you're cultivating a new skill of practicing self-care or you're expanding your repertoire of self-care. And so when we're implementing something new, we might be prone to forget. And so when we set reminders that helps us, so schedule it in, look at your week coming up. What is going to be the best time of day for you to practice this? How often is it going to be realistic for you to practice this? We want you to set yourself up for success. So don't say you're going to do it 7 days a week if that doesn't feel doable for you. Do what feels doable because again, it's about actually doing it, right? And so we don't want to set you up for success where you feel overwhelmed and you just don't do it at all. So what feels comfortable, what feels doable, and then set those phone reminders. Like just like you set a reminder to get up in the morning or to take your medicine, set a reminder to remind you to speak this life over yourself or to remind you to connect socially with someone or to spend that time with God. And then setting boundaries is the last tip that I would give. It really does require you to protect that time and say, I know there's other ways that I could be spending my time, but this is a priority for me. And so, because this is a priority, my own health and wellness is a priority for me. I'm going to do this, even though I could be doing something else. It's really as simple as that. It has to be a priority, and you have to set boundaries. And that's it. And that's it. So thank you again so much for spending your Friday evening with me. I'm happy to take any questions from you, but I want to let you know that you can definitely follow me on Instagram or on Facebook. I have my information here on the screen where you can reach out to me and follow me. If you want to learn more about self care, this is my book that's on the screen, the self care prescription that came out recently and really goes over all of those domains of wellness and gives you a wealth of information about practically what it looks like to incorporate self-care into your life. So it's not fluff and it's very down to earth language. Like how I talked today in the book. Like it's not words that you won't understand. It's very accessible. I made it because I wanted people to be able to pick it up and actually benefit from it and read it, anyone from any walk of life. And so I really hope that if you choose to get that, that blesses you. But also just the information that I've given tonight, I hope that this has blessed you and given you a new way to think about self-care and actually inspired you to think about one small way that you can change how you engage with yourself and how you take care of yourself. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. It's been a blessing, honor to be here. And I'm happy to take questions if you have them.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Robin. I know I was blessed by that. There were a few times if we had an organ, I would have queued it up for you because you were just dropping knowledge that did not just sound good, but had good substance. I appreciate that. Can y'all do me a favor? We're going to take about 3 questions, but can you all just take a second to give God some praise in the comments, and just let Dr. Robin know how much of a blessing her and her work is, to what we're doing. We believe that God does not just want to save us, but God wants us to aspire to become whole. And when you talk about mental health, emotional health, self care, that's our journey to become whole. And so I really appreciate that. There were a few questions that I saw, but also before we get to the questions, I want to do something very quickly. Reform Nash, we don't just want to support you by just having you come speak for us and giving you a platform, although you already have a big enough one. But we also want to support you by giving 3 of our wonderful viewers who've been watching all this time and been fed all this time a free copy of the book. So this is how you do it. In order to receive a free copy of the book, all you have to do is write the title of the book in the comments. And the first 3 people, I'm watching it. The first 3 people, we will reach out and message you, and we will ship you a copy of the book, which is entitled. If you already know what it's entitled, you got a head start. The Self Care Prescription. That's the shorter name for it. The Self Care Prescription. So the first 3 people to type the Self Care Prescription will be able to receive a free copy of it. And I believe that this is a way to bless us as well as to sow a seed into the ministry of Robin. And so I see 1, Brandy. I see 2, Shakira, and I see 3, Brittany. Hey, Brittany. And so those are our 3. And I'll be sure to get you all a free copy of the book. And I believe that if the book is anywhere near as powerful as what we have heard tonight, it will surely be a blessing. So if we can, do you have time for 3 questions?
Sure. Mhm.
Perfect. So question number 1 that I know that I saw um, is this: when stressed, we tend to struggle with getting adequate rest. What do you recommend for inability to sleep?
Yeah, that's a big one because there's a lot of thoughts that come in our mind. And so the first thing that I would recommend is a bedtime routine. And the power of a bedtime routine is it is actually indicating to our bodies that it's time to go to sleep. It's kinda getting our bodies prepared to go to sleep, just like, back in the day, we would warm up our car before we just drove it. We didn't just crank it up and drive it, we warmed it up, so and that was, like, getting the car ready and warmed so that it could, like, function and drive us where we wanted to go, and the same thing is true for sleep. We wanna, like, get our bodies ready to start winding down. So whether that's, like, taking a nice shower, whether that's starting to turn off some lights in your house. Some people like to read, whether that's kind of changing your clothes, like getting into nighttime clothes, really setting a ritual or a schedule up for yourself and really doing that, brushing your teeth. Some people like to have a nice cup of tea at night to, again, calm the body down, warm the body, get it ready for going to bed. So, really setting up a nice routine, again, that indicates to your body it's time to start winding down and going to sleep. And so this might mean getting off of social media at a certain time, turning off the TV at a certain time so that again you're not giving yourself just the lights of the computer and of the screen give us a lot of like energy and the light is telling our body that it's time to be awake. And so we need to mute some of that and really give ourselves that. And another thing that I'll say too is if you struggle with thoughts like worry thoughts that keep coming to you and you can't sleep, I would say try writing those things down, getting them out of your head and onto the paper and say, okay, I can think about that tomorrow. And then once you get that out of your head and onto the paper, then maybe you can go to sleep knowing, trusting that you can give it over. And again, giving it over in prayer to God, saying a prayer about it, asking God to help calm your mind. And then if, all of that fails, there are certain medications that you can be prescribed. I would encourage you to reach out to your doctor. A lot of times, primary care physicians will prescribe you something, whether it's just like a melatonin, which is kind of a natural thing to help your body sleep, or another kind of sleep aid. So definitely try with the routine first, try with the writing the thoughts down and see how that works and give it like a week and see how that works for you. But those are my recommendations for sleep.
Wow, that's really good. Something that you said a few times I think is worth repeating is self-care is a muscle.
Mm, mhm,
And so I think that that's really important to remember. And so as you said, decreasing the stimulants and just the hustle and bustle, the things that we do during the day, definitely seems like it's worth a try. So thank you for that. I have a second question, and that is, if you notice that you're in a negative mental spiral, how do you change your thought trajectory to be more positive?
mhm, mhm. And so I say the awareness is the first thing. So congratulations on just being aware, catching yourself in the thought spiral. Because sometimes we can be all the way out in a narrative that is 5 years from now, and we can just be gone. So I think congratulating yourself when you wake up from the spiral and saying, "Okay, like I got off there. How can I get out of this?" And I think one way to kind of snap yourself out of that spiral is to sometimes just change your context, like distract yourself, do something different to get your mind off of that thought, or replace that thought with some truth. Right, get into the Word, start reading the Bible. If especially if it's a worry thought and it's something that you're just kind of like ruminating over, how can you speak a truth, a promise that God has made over that kind of contradicts that fear that is trying to kind of take hold in your brain. So I would say doing that, and then also really, not underestimating the power of really doing something different, just getting yourself changing the context, changing the environment, going to work out, going to do something different, that's going to change your mind and kinda snap you out of that. But then a long-term strategy is really getting that word, dwell within you and starting to think something differently, because a lot of times the thoughts that we're given, that we're having, that we're worried about, are exaggerations, or we're kind of thinking the worst case scenario, and we really want to get out of the habit of doing that, because that really just kind of takes us down a path, and we thinking about things that we don't even know are true. We don't even know if that's really going to happen, right? And so we want to make sure that we're not kind of spending so much time and energy focusing on a thought that is just like a prediction of what might happen in the future, but it's not even based in reality. We want to be in the here and in the now. And I think another thing that can help you cultivate that practice of being able to come back to the present moment is the meditation that we started with in the beginning. So there's tons of apps, free apps out there. There's tons of videos on YouTube of meditation, and really is training your brain to focus in on one thing at a time and focus, if you will, on your breath, or focus on some other thing in your environment that you want to focus on. So I would say that's another way too, is to start to practice some meditation to really get yourself out of your head and into your body and really connect it to what you need in this moment.
Wow, thank you. I think that's really valuable as well. I didn't really see a final question other than this, and I think I saw maybe two or three comments about this. A link or the links for the journal prompts
Mhm.
that you mentioned. I know you mentioned getting it out of your head and getting it on the paper. Do you know any off the top of your head, or if not, we can potentially send it out later?
Yeah, so a journal prompt for like self-care would be, again, what I said earlier, was like, what is the most loving thing that I can do for myself right now? Or what is another one is, what is my body telling me that it needs right now? But again, that you have to be take the time to be quiet and really to center yourself and to focus in and pay attention, but getting quiet and saying, what is my body telling me that I need right now? um, what is the most loving thing that I can do for myself? What am I worried about right now? Asking yourself that, writing that out. What is my greatest fear? And what is my greatest hope? So always like countering, right, those negative thoughts or those fears with hope. So what is my greatest fear, but then also what is my greatest hope, and how can I move in the direction of manifesting that hope and focusing my brain and my energy on that hope that I have for myself. But I can definitely send an email as well with a slide. I have a slide full of different journal prompts that can be useful, and so I can email that to you, Russell, and you can distribute.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the overtime that you put in today.
No problem.
And I know I can say personally, I learned a lot. And we always say this isn't just a place that we come gather like it's the country club or just because it's that certain time that we gather. But we believe this needs to be a place of information and inspiration. And so we appreciate God for sending you our way for that. And we don't take it lightly. So thank you again. Also, I'll be reaching out to the 3 winners of the book. If this is your first time visiting us or tuning in, thank you. You're no longer guests, but you're now family. Be sure to like our Facebook page, to subscribe to us, stay up to date, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we would love to allow you to stay up to date with what God's doing in the life of the believers here at reformnash. So thank you once again. We love you. Thank you, Dr. Robyn. We can't repay you for how well you did tonight. And so the best we can do is continue to spread this. If you know somebody who needs self-care, you know somebody who needs to strengthen this muscle, then make sure that you send it to somebody who may need it. So thank you all. Have a good night and God bless.
Thank you.